Brockhampton, Roadrunner, New Light, New Machine, album review, let's chat about it. Hey guys, what's going on? John here for What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this new one from Brockhampton, Texas-based hip-hop collective and America's favorite boy band. The infamous Brockhampton, who a few years ago seemingly came on the scene out of nowhere, saturating, pun intended, the hip-hop scene with a trio of very electric, very intense mixtapes, Saturation 1, 2, and 3. Saturation 1 is certainly very good. I like the way that they play off each other's strengths on this album. Not only that, but singles like Heat and Boys are still to this day some of my favorite tracks from Brockhampton. But while I did enjoy Saturation 1 quite a bit, Saturation 2 did let me down a little bit. It's actually probably my least favorite Brockhampton project, but ever since, the boys have only grown. As a matter of fact, Saturation 3's more alternative rap sound honestly sold me on them as a collective. And by the time 2018's Iridescence came along, they were a completely different band. Yes, physically, they were the same band, but I think the whole Amir Vance situation really made them mature a lot quicker than we may have otherwise. But honestly, I think it was all for the better. Not only that, but I thought this album was the culmination of everything that they did on Saturations 1, 2, and 3, and it was a great blend of those sounds. For me, though, I have said it time and time again, I think Ginger is my favorite album of theirs. Yes, it is their saddest album today, their most tragic album today, but it's also their most painfully real album to date. Not to mention Dearly Departed, Boy Bye, and No Halo are three of the best tracks the band has ever put together. And leading up to this album, there's a lot to discuss. The fiery new singles, the fact that this is apparently their second to last album, even though I'm pretty sure we've heard that before, Kevin Abstract, just saying. Let's chat about this thing. The album starts off with Buzzcut featuring Danny Brown, and it is awesome. This, to me, as an intro, does everything I need. I love the intoxicating beat, and I love just how upfront and sort of a call to action Kevin Abstract's verse is here. It's a really great wild-eyed start. Now, the direction that the rest of this album takes is pretty sorrowful compared to this, at least in the later moments, but after hearing just how dreary Ginger was, I needed a little wake-up call, something that'll rattle my bones, and that's what Buzzcut does. And Danny Brown just happens to be an awesome feature on this track. I mean, his off-the-wall personality really blends very nicely with the band's sound. And the auto-tune finale is just icing on the cake. Chain On the other hand, took a little while to grow on me. This one features JPEG Mafia. And honestly, like I said, it took a while for me to grow on this because I saw JPEG Mafia on this track list and I got excited. I thought this was going to be a wild-eyed, noisy, freaking banger. And it's not that. That being said, I was a little upset at first, but Peggy's verse on here is pretty damn smooth. Not to mention the obscure professional wrestling references on this track. Damn, Peggy. Not to mention Don McLennan's verse on this track is just as skilled as he usually is. I mean, if there's someone in Brockhampton that I can't wait to break out and release a tape and get all fired up over, it's Dom. His verses usually hype the hell out of me. Count on Me, on the other hand, is not along the lines of what I expected, but it's certainly pretty good still. I mean, this is about the closest thing to a pop rap trap that Brockhampton has ever touched. And while I do really like this track, and I love this track, there are some red flags here. Okay, look. I'm glad we're hearing more from Jabari, and Matt Champion's verse here, it's fine. Like, this is a very solid Matt Champion verse. But then we get a lot of odd guest features here. I mean, don't get me wrong, this track works overall, but we're getting a verse from A$AP Rocky here, and he sounds fine, and Shawn Mendes is on this hook, and he actually pulls it off great, but this doesn't, to me, sound like a Brockhampton project. For the moment, it's fine, but it does put a little worry in the back of my mind. The Light, though, is staggeringly good. Like, I'm absolutely stunned. One of the best tracks here, if not the best track. We get verses here from Joba and Kevin Abstract, and both of them are some of the best that they've ever recorded. And for a few short minutes, this is so much more of what I expected to hear on this entire project. This is painfully real. It is emotionally crushing, exhausting even. That, alongside this hazy beat and these crashing guitars, this is fantastic. Okay, let's talk now. Something is off about this album. Something is genuinely off. Most of this album is Brockhampton doing what they do best and doing it pretty electric too. But there is something off, something very scattered about this album that I can't help but overlook. Bankroll featuring A$AP Rocky and A$AP Ferg was my first major letdown here. Y'all may not know this. I am a diehard A$AP Ferg fan, and I've always really enjoyed A$AP Rocky's work. But they don't have nearly as much as chemistry with Brockhampton that I'd hope. I mean, we on the same verse here have A$AP Ferg and Merlin Wood back to back. This should be like gold. These two have such bombastic personalities, but it's sloppy. And like the amount of swagger on the hook, there certainly is something to this track, but I don't know, it's a little unfocused, it's blurry. And then I hear like I'll Take You On featuring Charlie Wilson. This track makes me want to never hear them take a route down the alternative R&B rabbit hole ever again. This is odd. This is a sound that they've tackled for years. But this to me is alarmingly cheesy. For a tune in this vein, there is no emotion in sight, and the sung hooks get old real fast. Matt Champion's verse here is also shoddy, like it's fine, but I've heard a lot better from him in the past. The only one really that brings A-game here is Bareface. And Old News featuring Baird isn't that much better. You know, on their last album, Ginger, they went for a more introspective and somber sound, but they did it so consciously. They did it through writing really strong tunes. But this sounds like it from a distance, but it also sounds like one of the guys here was like, okay, we need another sad song, and they just kind of ripped this up. The result is uninspired. Baird's contributions here, super forgettable. Merlin Wood sounds really out of place. Matt sounds bored. I mean, Joba sounds okay, but he is one of the most featured and strongest sounding elements of Brockhampton on this entire album. Sadly, this is another reminder, there is a disconnect. And When I Ball isn't bad, but it's just not a Brockhampton track. This tries to bring in this jazzy, conscious side to the group, and I could see them nailing that. But this just shows them trying something and not being themselves and missing. It's odd. There is a disconnect on this album for better and for worse. Kevin Abstract said that this is their second to last album, and it feels like that in more ways than one, for better and for worse. I mean, on one hand, we are getting more spotlights on people. Like, I could totally see from this album Kevin Abstract breaking out and Joba breaking out, as well as some of the others. But at the same time, in the moment, there is a little bit of a disconnect. This is far from a bad album, but something is certainly off here. But there are still some really great surprises and late great moments. I hear Windows, and this track blows my mind how good it is. This is an old school, by the books, hardcore hip hop influenced posse cut. It's gritty, it's grimy, it takes things from boom bap to horrorcore. It's sort of old school, but it's also just brimming with personality. Not only that, over this 6-minute track, they seem like a collective. They play off each other's strengths. They support one another, all while remaining truly electric. What's the occasion reminds me just who the hell we're dealing with here. This sounds a lot like The Light from earlier. It's very guitar driven. There's something also very old school about this track that I can't really put my finger on. But at the end of the day, this is something I wish we heard a little bit more of. I mean, I don't want to say that they should be limited to that sad boy rap from Ginger, but honestly, there's more heart on tracks like this than some of the other experiments on this album. And Joba's performance here, once again, the guy sounds like he's ready to branch out. Don't Shoot Up the Party, on the other hand, took me a little while to appreciate, but it is really cool. This one is G-Funk inspired to the nines. It's current, it's filled with so much anger, and it is just so electric once again. It reminds me a lot of like the Saturation 1 era. And Dear Lord, while not one of my favorite tracks here, it is an unbearably powerful statement. I mean, it is nothing but raw emotion. We see Bareface taking center stage here for a sort of gospel cut. And here we see him praying alongside Joba, who recently apparently lost his father to suicide. It is unbearably raw. But it's also gorgeous, so strong. And I really like the light part too as a finale here. Once again, it features heavily Kevin Abstract and Joba, and it is really powerful once again. It's a little bit more stripped down overall. But lyrically, I think it's one of the most intense tracks here. We get Kevin Abstract diving back into his childhood very visually, and also we have Joba directly referencing his father here. It is intense. It's commendable and genuinely one of the most telling and cohesive thoughts here. This is a tough album for me. I mean, there is so much to still love about Brockhampton. When they are on here, they are still so electric and dynamic and just still a wild and must-listen-to act in modern hip-hop. But the fact of the matter is, this possibly is their second to last album, and for better or worse, it feels like that. There are a lot of moments here where it sounds like the guys are ready to branch out, ready to go off and do their own thing for a while, maybe coming back for, a reunion someday. But at the same time, you can't overlook the amount of disjointedness at times. There were, times years ago where they were constantly playing off each other, constantly playing to each other's strengths, working as a unit. We don't get a lot of that here, for better and for worse, like I said. Still, I think that this is definitely worth a listen. This isn't the best Brockhampton project. It's not the worst Brockhampton project. There's a lot to love here, but there are some red flags as well. I'm curious to see what happens later this year with their final album. But for now, I'm feeling a decent 7 on this thing, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.